And now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelist for today's broadcast, Luigi Nicoletta, Senior Manager of Tax and Global Mobility for Radius. Luigi has 10 years' experience of working in the international tax and global mobility arena, which included 7 years working for 2 of the Big Four organizations. Luigi works day to day on global mobility assignment issues with a particular focus on U.S. outbound into Europe, frequently focusing on U.S. expats heading into the UK, Germany, and Italy. Over to you, Luigi.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Ed. As you correctly said, I try to help both employers and employees with minimizing tax exposures for their assignment in both the home and the host location, as well as ensuring compliance with the relevant obligations and common practice. And I will try to give some helpful insights into the various intricacies of an international assignment. So if we look at the agenda, there are on the top of the agenda key questions to consider. That we'll be discussing things which you may not have thought of at the outset of an assignment, and some of the things may sound familiar to you, others will be probably new. We'll be talking about assignment policies, overviews and definitions, immigration and visa requirements, tax compliance and management, tax reimbursement methodologies, expat services in both the home and host country, expat payroll matters, and common mistakes and solutions that we will suggest for those mistakes. As I said, these are all burning issues which may sound familiar to many of you on this webinar today, and we will try to address them all. Now, on to the next slide, please. The first point of the next slide talks about, can you produce a list of employees currently working out of their home countries with scheduled dates of return? So really this is about who tracks and maintains a list of employees which are out of your home location. And you'd be amazed as to how many companies, especially when your assignment program becomes quite large, fall foul of this very basic thing. The next key question to consider is someone monitoring when frequent business visitors to an overseas country become liable to local immigration and tax payment filing obligations. Frequent travelers, which may be regarded as on an assignment, but who might still trigger tax and immigration issues. And we will touch upon these a little bit later during the slide. There's this 180 days rule, which sometimes is misunderstood the way it works, and more effectively tax liabilities being triggered inadvertently become a real nightmare for some organizations. The next point is, are work permits and appropriate visas being obtained in advance of an employment in a country? This is relatively straightforward, and yet sometimes is underestimated, especially in regards to timing it takes. Point number 4, how do you manage specific employee relocation solutions? So this talks about particularly situations where it is regarding a group or project-based assignment. Are there specific provisions for certain type of workers versus others, which you may need to consider? Point number 5, how do you ensure that your expat is not made worse off in terms of by virtue of working overseas? So we'll talk about the three different options which are usually available: tax equalization, tax protection, and laissez-faire. And point number 6 is the compensation. What extra compensation do you provide, and how do you know if this is the right amount to compensate for living overseas? So in other words, is the compensation for living overseas benchmarked using the third-party data in terms of COLA, cost of living allowance, housing allowance, one-time advance relocation payment, and so forth. On to the next slide. Have you structured the expat compensation package in the most tax-efficient way possible for home and host country taxes? Is it benchmarked versus specific industry and market best practices? Some proper analysis needs to be done to put a compensation package together quite clearly. Point number 8, what support do you provide to the expat for overseas income, social security, and immigration requirements, and how do you communicate these to the expat pre-assignment? So how do you provide all of these? Do you put them in touch with a tax advisor, local accountants, and who are going to make them aware of the tax issues and their own obligations? Because clearly they'll have their part to play in reporting their own expenses and income in a timely fashion so that you can fulfill your own obligations as an employer. Point number 9, what physical relocation support do you provide and how do you set the policy for reimbursement, i.e. are you going to allow business class flights for over 4 or 8 hours flights? Do you provide sea freight or air freight? Do you provide storage in the home location? These again are all typical questions that you need to be thinking of. Point number 10, what is your policy with respect to managing payment and compliance of host country income taxes? Typically, your assignee will need to file an individual income tax return in the host location. If the individuals don't comply, the local authorities, although it's an individual responsibility, they may go after you as the employer. Point number 11, what provisions have been made for home and host country net salary payment? So the assignee would want to make sure that he's getting exactly the same amount of net pay. If there is a currency difference between the home country and the host location, how do you ensure that he still gets the same net amount in his pocket after currency conversions and tax deductions? Point number 12, can your payroll system accommodate expat adjustments such as COLA and hypo taxes? Some providers' payroll systems are not capable of accommodating extra allowances, benefits, hypo taxes, and other typical items of an assignment program, and you need to be thinking of how you're going to be dealing with that. Point 13, how do you ensure full compliant reporting of all assignment-related compensation in home and host countries? Sometimes wrong idea, a tax return is that all is needed, but in fact there could be year-end benefit forms. So for example, here in the UK we have a P11D where the benefits are reported. There are monthly obligations in some jurisdictions, quarterly submissions. So what happens at home does not necessarily reflect what happens in other jurisdictions. And again, these are all points for you to consider.